So what did you do when you ETS'd?
I got out and I had 54 days of terminal leave, which is just like PTO in the civilian world. And I got back uh, mid-December, so I had Christmas. And then I think I took 2 weeks off and I got a job as a security guard where I worked there for a year. Um, I also did not want to go to school immediately. I told myself I'd have a year off. And so for at least 30 days of terminal leave, I was getting my E4 paycheck and then I was getting full-time pay. And I was just trying to reassimilate at first.
I had nowhere near that amount of terminal leave because I used my leave all the time because I was so miserable. I would just like use little chunks of it just to not go to work. I think I had like 8 days of terminal leave or something like that. So when I got my DD-214, I left the base, went straight to the airport and flew back to California and ended up staying with my parents for a while. The first thing I did, I went back to a job that I had done before the military. It was retrofitting fluorescent lighting. We would go into these like businesses or commercial buildings and pull all the old fluorescent lighting out and put in like LED strips instead, or like energy efficient fluorescent lighting, because California they were giving out grants for this stuff, so it was a really easy sell to the businesses because it didn't really cost them anything, and then their electricity bill went way down. But yeah, it was just I think I was making like $14 an hour or something. I had no idea what I was gonna do. I just wanted to be out and get some money in my pocket.
I started working full time. I was doing at least 40 hours a week. I was taking every overtime shift available. I was realistically doing like minimum probably 60 a week. And I tried to see as many people that were still like in my hometown as possible. It's weird like that I mean, everyone has a different experience. Some people like only take a few months, some people take a few years to like back into it, but like a lot of times I just didn't really know what to do. Not in like a confused way, but just in like no one was telling you what to do.
Yeah.
If you want to go eat, you go eat. If you want to eat two lunches, you go eat two lunches. If you want to, on a Sunday watch movies all day, no one's gonna yell at you. And I was just like, it was almost so much freedom that I think I needed to like taper off of it, right? Because I remember being like, I'm kind of bored because there's just too many options. I go to the movies, I go to lunch, hang out with my friends. So I worked for the first year as many hours as I could because I was just so like concerned about money because that's what all your sergeants told you when getting out. You're gonna go broke and you're gonna have to come back in. And I was just like, that's not gonna happen. So I was working. I had my 54 days of terminal. It's funny you mentioned that you needed like little breaks. I took 1 2 week vacation or whatever in the army, and then the rest I saved it because one of my sergeants was like, "Hey, when everyone's gone on block leave, like it's half days, it's super chill." And he was right for the most part. Like everybody was gone, and I was just chilling. So I was like, "Hey, this is sick. I'm saving my days." Because I knew like every month that passed, every few months that passed, I was like, I want to get out so bad. So I just saved all my days. And those 2 extra months of getting out early was like, I was like, oh, this is like a miracle from God
Yeah.
that I can leave.
You didn't get stuck doing like some kind of random crazy thing when you stayed behind on block leave because they have no one else to do anything. They're like, where's the lowest ranking person? Okay, yeah, you're gonna something insane like you need to empty out all the defact dumpsters because there's no one here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you get stuck on like stupid details every now and then, but I was like, hey, doing this detail is not as bad because the leadership I don't like isn't here. These are just random people. And
Yeah.
also on those details, like those other people didn't know who you were. They didn't really know where you reported. You were just like an E3 that was helping out. maybe you were there, maybe you weren't there. I don't know. But then also I was lucky because I told you and on previous videos at like month 3 or 4 my disability VA kicked in. So like I was working full time getting like 60 hours a week paycheck. The VA kicked in. It was much higher than I thought it would be. And so I was chilling and then after a year I went back to school. So I was getting the compensation plus the school. I left the job and then I got 6 months of unemployment. So I was raking in all 3 of those things. And I was like, yo, this is a lot better than sweeping cat litter at the motor pool for $500 a week.
I absolutely get where you're coming from, where you're like, I can just do anything I want, but I don't know what I want to do because you get so used to, you know, you have a certain routine, and when the weekend comes around, we get kind of out of control sometimes because you're just so desperate for some kind of entertainment or something that you can forget about all the stuff you did during the week. And so you create a routine around that, and then when you get out and you suddenly have all this time that you can do anything you want to do, it can be difficult to figure out what that means. And so, I messed around with this low paying job for a while doing something I didn't want to do. And then one of my friends that lived in Texas, he called me and he's like, "Hey, you're out now. What are you doing?" And I told him what I was doing. He's like, "Oh man, that sounds horrible. You should come work for the company I work for." And he worked for a finance company, the not-for-profit that manages basically every major university's retirement plans. And he was like, "Yeah, come over here. You'll get paid like 52 grand a year." And this was in 2016. So that was a pretty decent paycheck, especially for it being in Texas.
Eggs were way more affordable back then.
Yeah, they were basically free. So he's like, "Yeah, come work for this company. You'll get paid during your like 3 months of training that you have to do." I was like, "Okay, yeah, sounds like a plan." So I just moved to Texas and started that job and got my Series 6 license, which authorizes you to buy and sell
Life and health?
stocks and bonds. I also got life and health for all 50 states. And I got a Series 63 license that is like a state level financial license for doing the same thing, transactions with stocks, bonds, things like that. And yeah, the pay was great. The benefits were amazing. You immediately got like 25 days off of PTO that you could use. But
It's almost as much as the army.
I
You
missed.
could lose your legs or just sell stocks.
Yeah, when you think about it that way, it wasn't a super hard decision to make. But I hated every minute of it. It was like a call center thing, and every minute of your time was micromanaged. You'd have to be, clicking a button to be in a certain status, and someone would track all of that, and that directly affected, your promotion possibilities, your bonus at the end of the year. And so when you click the button to go into your ready status, there's just a sea of people waiting for the next available agent. And it just turned into a dread thing where I'd go click and immediately my phone rings and it's someone that's 85 years old and can't figure out how to reset their password on their account. Or it's someone who wants you to go through every investment that they have and explain exactly what percentage it gained or lost. And you don't get to choose. You can't hang up on these people. It was just miserable. I hated it, but it paid really well.
That sounds exactly like one of my first like real jobs after getting out, which I'm sure we'll touch on in the future. But so a year passed, I'm going to school. I went to the same community college that I flunked out of before the army, and I ended up getting like straight A's and B's, so that was pretty cool. I did that. I wasn't working. I was like, I'm not going to work anymore because I didn't need to. So I took like 2 years off, got my grades really high at school, and I ended up transferring to a private college in the state that was super expensive. And we could get into benefits on a different episode, but basically it was so expensive that the GI Bill didn't cover it. So the guy who worked there was like, hey, you have to use the yellow ribbon, which is like a scholarship program, which pays for the other half of the school. I decided to do physical therapy. The plan was to become a physical therapist and work with like amputated vets. I was like, that'd be really cool. That's where I found out I'm really bad at science. You had to take like bio and chem and then like organic chem. And then each one of these has, I love when colleges do like, they make you take all these classes and all these classes have labs. And the lab is just as much work as the class, but it's only 1 credit opposed to 3. So they're like, yeah, you're just going to take, four classes. And then, 3 of those classes have labs. It's like, oh, so there's 7 classes. You're making it just 7 classes. Long story short, I didn't do well. But after that, I had a pretty cool opportunity. Pay sucked. Pay was dog shit, but it was a cool opportunity where I was an assistant manager of logistics at 𝐬𝐮 Hospital here in Connecticut, which is the biggest hospital. And I
Okay.
only got the job because the boss was also an Army veteran. And she was just like, hey, I want to help you out and get something on your resume. And it was great. No benefits because it was a contract position and the pay was like, I think it was $12. So, but I was like, hey, I'm going to school plus getting, your disability. So I was like, hey, I'm doing just fine. So I'll get something on my resume at least.
That seems to be a really hot thing right now too. I see posts for jobs that they want you to have logistics as an experience, or the positions that they're hiring for are actually logistics too. But yeah, that's a cool thing.
We ran the whole warehouse, everything coming in and out of the hospital. Like literally, if toilet paper was getting delivered to the hospital, I had to make sure that the dudes brought it up to the certain rooms that needed toilet paper. If chemo medicine was coming in, if prisons escorted their prisoners through the warehouse to like go to certain places, so we had to let like the correctional officers in, and then like super expensive medicine that can go bad, like if it has to stay refrigerated, had to make sure it went to the other facility, and we were going all over the state. So like urgent cares on the other side of the state, hospitals up north. It was definitely great experience, and I think it probably helped my resume, but definitely stressful for $12.
Oh yeah, yeah. It seems like that would have paid more, especially dealing with really expensive drugs or life-saving drugs and prisoners being escorted through like what?
Dude, easily, I should have been easily making $50,000 in that position. But I was like, hey, I don't care. It's chill. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? I was really just wanted to focus on school. I wanted my grades to be good. And then after that, I stayed there for a year. The company lost the contract. And then after that, I went into construction and made bank. My buddy got me a job working on like overpasses in the state.
Oh, okay.
And he literally, like, you're just jackhammering all day, 12 hours. You just stood there, and I was like, and like, it was so painful, right? Like, my bones. I picture, like, in like science class when it shows you like what your body looks like without the skin on, right? Like all your muscles and your skeleton and like your
Mhm.
veins and shit. All of that shit was aggressively vibrating. But then you got your paycheck, and I was like, this is the most money I've ever seen in my life. They were paying us like after the 401k, after taxes, I was getting 1,200 every Friday. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I was like, we made it. This is incredible. Uh, I mean, it sucked. It hurt really bad. And then got laid off from that because construction constantly lays people off like 4 months later. And that's when I got my first job at a call center in a wealth management firm where I was doing the exact same thing you were doing, just didn't need to be licensed. Like, if I had to go take a piss, I had to put myself in bathroom mode, and you had 2 minutes, so I had to like run. I was like,
Uh-huh.
move, like pushing people, had to pee, had to run back, and then you'd clock in at like 2 minutes, 10 seconds, and then they'd take that 10 seconds off your overall daily metrics, and they were like, whoa, we got to talk about these 10 seconds. You were
Yeah.
late.
Yeah. It was just it was the worst. And I mean, I kind of understand why companies do that to a certain extent, but man, not everyone is cut out to be micromanaged at that kind of level.
Yeah, it's super under a microscope.
I actually I remember because the military, I used to dip like Copenhagen wintergreen, the chewing tobacco.
Yeah,
And
the shit's nasty.
it is. And I was like so addicted to that. I'd have to have it in like as soon as I woke up in the morning and then like all day up until I went to bed. Well, it was not allowed at this job, which arguably made things a little bit worse. But I remember like I would have it with me and then, I'd click the button to go on break and like run to the bathroom and just go sit in a stall so I could chew for 15 minutes, dude. It was
Yeah,
I've
it's gross.
yeah, I've quit that, but man, what an existence.
Yeah, so that was the first couple years. I really, my goal was not to do anything crazy, just wind down, get back in the rhythm of like going to school, homework is due, how to properly study for tests, and then just like working, figuring out how to like edit your resume because when I went through ACAP, like, we went through, when I went through ACAP, which is now TAP, I think it's just singular TAP
I think it's
or TAPS,
I think it's taps
TAPS.
or SFL tap or something like that.
Well, it used to be called ACAP, and I went through it, and I don't really remember what they told us. I wasn't paying attention. I was like, I don't care, get me out. I did pay attention to some of it, like they had like these oldie sevens that retired that were like doing your resume, and they told us like, oh, this is gonna really help you out. It sucked. I remember like looking back on it now, my resume had like 3 successful fire missions as a junior leadership, and like how on earth does that translate to the civilian world? Yeah, but at the time I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Like, more than me. That's why you're doing this, right? Because you help people and you know more.
No.
Doesn't mean anything. I do remember they had a really good opportunity. Midwest, or that area was big on like oil rigs, but they brought in other companies like reps who were hiring
Mhm.
vets. And there was this one dude who was like, come work on the oil rig. We love hiring vets. I think the pay was like, I think it was like at least 60,000 a year, which back then, after getting out at like E4 pay, I was like, 60,000, you're rich. And you only had to work like half the month, but you had to stay in Oklahoma. And I was
Mhm.
like, ugh, I think I'd rather struggle in the Northeast than stay in this state any longer. So I passed. And then just went to school. Did not like all those videos and stereotypes of like, oh yeah, vets won't fit in with college kids. Completely accurate. Complete, like they could tell I wasn't 18. They were all like, a lot of these kids knew each other, and I would like, listen in on their conversations in class while I was just sitting for it to start. And they were like, oh yeah, like what'd you guys do over the summer? Talking about like their hometown friends, and I was like, no relation here. And every
I
single
set
class
up
started.
a tent in the middle of a field for no reason. That's what I did last summer.
Yeah, and it was tough because some classes like math or science that like have like, you need to keep building on those foundations, right? Not like history where it's like, yeah, we know what happened in 1776, but math where it's like you got to know all the formulas to keep doing this next advanced math. I didn't remember any of that. So the teacher, teacher's like, I'm sure you guys all remember this from 3 months ago. And I was like, it's been like 4 years. Don't recall.
While I was working at the financial company, I, was even though I was making the equivalent of $52,000 a year, it's still like I had debt and stuff that I needed to take care of, so that was eating into my paychecks. And then, I was paying for my apartment was $850 a month. Man, I wish we could go back to those prices. But I was like, I need to enroll in college and use my GI Bill. And I did that. And then, I'm looking at, oh, if you do less than this number of credits, you only get, half the money that they give you for BAH basically, or it's supposed to cover your housing. And so I think I ended up signing up for 12 credits, and that went very, very poorly. I don't think I was ready to go back to school yet. That was, within 3 or 4 months of me getting out. And I'm trying to, work a full-time job where my shift was 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then trying to do, all the coursework either before or after. It just wasn't my brain could not handle all of that at the same time at that point in time. And so I had never gotten a D in my life as a grade. And I got one, and I was like, oh, it's not the time to do this right now. So I just ended up dropping all my remaining classes. Part of it, though, too, was, the first 2 classes that I got, one was a class on how to go to college. Already was really annoying to me. And then the second one was humanities. I would go twice a week and sit in like a classroom so that I could get the in-person pay, because as many people already know, if you go to at least one class one day in person, the amount you get paid is drastically larger. And so I would go sit in this class at night, just the people in there, this was a little bit different. There were a couple other vets in there because they were doing basically the same thing, but like there were people who would like bring their kids in there with them, or they're just like going off on tangents for no reason. And it's already something that I'm like, why am I sitting in here for this? This has nothing to do with anything I want to do with my life. It's not related at all. And I could not do it.
You might have had better luck. Not like you have to. Your shift was terrible. So if you had like a normal shift, like 8 to 4 or 5, you could have done night school. But yeah, if you tried to do all online back then, they took out like 75% of what you were supposed to make, which was so stupid that you needed to like physically go in. So I tried to do one or two courses in, the other half online, which was much easier. And then also, the new school I went to was in a higher zip code, and they pay you off of your zip code. So I lived in a cheaper one, and the school I was going to at the time was giving me, I think, 2,000 tax-free a month. And then I went to this other school, which was 30 minutes away, and they were giving me 2,500 tax-free a month. And I was like, oh, sick, it's an extra $500. So I purposely didn't need to work because I was like, I'm just going to make it work off of this pay. But yeah, another thing is nobody tells you, and maybe it's common sense, but nobody tells you that you don't get paid for the months you're not in school. So like, it's, and like, some vets might be like, oh, you should have like saved or balanced better. But when you're getting a set amount of money every month on the first, and then, winter break comes December and they're like, oh, there's no school, so you don't get paid. And you're like, oh, but I still have rent. And they're like, sorry,
Yeah.
those are the benefits that are so good. And then it happens in the summer too. So I got my school out of the way really quick. I always did a a December winter course, which was 4 weeks, super accelerated. And then in June and July and like August, I did like they were overlapping, so like 6 weeks and 6 weeks. So July, you had the overlap of 2 courses to make sure I always got paid, which sucked because then you couldn't hang out with like friends that were still back there. And they were like, hey, we're going to go do summer stuff because like it's the weekend. And you're like, oh, I'm doing a course at 3 times normal speed. So I can't because of those super good benefits I get that don't pay you all year round. So a lot of that's where that was probably my first experience where I was like, a recruiter didn't tell me that.
Not that it's impossible to make it work, but I definitely agree and understand with what you're saying because, you know, just like the point you made, your rent doesn't take a break during the winter or summer, even though schools are designed that way. So it seems like most people, you probably have to at least work part-time or something like that so that you can cover those gaps. Me, perfect example, when I got out, I just wasn't prepared for that kind of, you have to be very organized and manage your time really well. And if you've gotten used to not having to do that ever, it can be very difficult to plan and manage all those things.
Absolutely. And we can touch more on benefits in the future. Anything else you wanna add to this episode?
I think what we can do is we'll pick back up on this again and kind of discuss the back half of both of our progressions after getting out, because right now we're kind of up to the point where we're at the midway. We've got some things figured out, but we haven't really determined what our real career is going to be.
Yeah, good point. So next episode we will continue. Eventually, we'll get to where we're currently at, and then maybe we can speculate on the future. All right. Thanks, everybody.